Welcome to MCN and our 2023 long-term test fleet. And if you didn't already know, what happens at MCN is that we run bikes for an extended period to see what they're like actually to live with day to day. And today we're talking to Alison Silcox.
Hello there.
Who's MCN's office manager, and her Zero DSRX.
Spot on.
And I've asked you to come up with a list of things you like about this bike and not so keen on.
Yes, yeah.
10 of each.
Yep.
Maybe.
Maybe, around 10.
Right, I think it might be a good idea to start with the good bits.
Yeah, no worries.
First, be positive to begin
Yeah,
with.
always be
Not
positive.
an electric pun, obviously.
Oh,
and
we'll have
then,
ample of them.
And then stick around for the bad bits at the end. So, number one thing you like about this, in no particular order, I'm guessing, the reverse.
It's the only bike I've ever had that's got a reverse gear.
Yeah.
So when you've turned the engine off, go through the different modes, and you can then, on the throttle, just open the throttle up and it reverses you backwards obviously. Because where I live, I've got a really bad drive situation and it's all different angles. So to have the reverse, because the bike's quite heavy, it makes a massive difference. It's really good.
Big difference.
Yeah.
Okay, next one, the Eco Mode Regen.
Yeah.
What's regen?
Regen is when basically it's equivalent to engine braking, it feels like, on a normal bike, but it's when it's putting some juice back into the battery. So when you're off the throttle, it puts a bit of juice back into the battery. But when you're in eco mode, it's quite severe. Once you get used to it, it's actually really good. You very rarely have to actually touch the brakes. You just go off the throttle and it drops your speed down for you. And
do you use that in lieu of braking?
I do a little bit, yeah, at certain points. A bit like you would if you were riding a twin-cylindered machine where you go off the throttle and the engine does braking for you. The regen's very similar.
Is it too much or is it okay?
I find that it's okay. My other half has actually ridden the bike and he found it a little bit severe.
Yeah.
But when I've been using it, I found it was really good actually, because I'd got the time to practice and got used to using it.
Yeah. Okay, next are the controls of the bike. Very simple controls, you've said.
Yeah, last year I had a Honda NT 1100 as my long-term test bike, and I think from memory it had something like 11 buttons on the left-hand switch gear, which was about 10 buttons too many. On this one, they're incredibly simplistic, and it makes it really easy. You've literally just got a mode button, indicators, horn on your left-hand side, and the mode button is to scroll through the different riding modes, plus also to go into the different settings when the engine's or when the key's turned off. So it's so much easier, so simple.
And of course, being an electric bike, there's one big control missing off the bars.
Yeah, I've got no clutch.
No clutch.
Yeah, none whatsoever. So
twist and go.
Yeah, it would actually, personally, I think you'd be better placed if you had your rear brake up on the hand, the same as you would on a scooter. I think that would be better use. But that said, it's easy.
Okay. And then the next point you've got is commuting. You like its commuting ability.
Yes, riding to and from work. I live about 15 miles away. Most of my journey's on the A1. And what I found is this is great for dropping to and from the office because, which we'll talk about a bit later, the charging side of things gets a little bit complicated sometimes.
Yeah.
Riding to and from work, I could do 3 trips to work without having to actually plug it in.
Yeah.
So it's great from that side of things. And having had the luggage fitted, I know it looks a bit gash, some people think, but it makes it easier because you can get cables are in the top box.
Yeah.
And then obviously I can get my laptop and things in there as well. So
So at home you plug it into a 3-pin plug on the wall, which is they call a level 1, don't they?
Yeah.
And then here you plug into these machines.
Yeah, these are obviously we're fortunate working in where we do. We've got the whole row of chargers. So I plug into the chargers here and then use a little app and charge it up here.
But is this level 1 here or level 2?
No, these are level 2.
Level 2, so slightly quicker than home. Okay. You like the fact it's an automatic when you're filtering?
Automatic's so much easier for filtering because you're not having to fiddle around changing gears. You just use your throttle, and particularly if you're in eco mode where you're on and off the throttle and it's sort of conserving your speed for you. It's just really smooth and easy when you're filtering.
Yeah, excellent. And you like the comfort?
Yeah, I found it relatively comfortable. I've done a couple of longer riding days. On this one, a longer riding day isn't my traditional longer riding day because of range. but I've not had any aches or pains on this one at all. And I like the fact it's got a nice low seat and it's quite a plush seat as well.
Yeah.
So I have found it really comfortable to ride.
I mean, you've done some big riding days, not necessarily all of it riding.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of stopping, but you've done big distances on it and it's still been comfortable.
Yeah, I've been up as far as Scotland on it, and yes, it was comfortable. But you do have a lot of time off the bike because of charging.
to recover.
So you do recover, yeah.
How many miles totally have you done on this incident?
I've done around 3,500.
Right, okay. Okay, the next one you said on the goods is the luggage is good but expensive.
Yeah, it's SW Motec.
But they're good. They're a good mate.
They're a good
really
brand.
Good,
yeah, a really good brand. Purpose fit for this particular bike, but it's around 1,500 quid, so it is expensive. With having to carry leads with you to be able to charge.
Not the city.
Not the city of Leeds. No, wires.
It's not that big, is it?
My cables, yeah.
Yes,
Having the top box, obviously half of that is filled up with carrying my cables around because
Right.
I always have the cable to fit into the level 2 chargers, but I always bring what they call the granny cable, which is a 3-pin plug one with me, in case I get caught out somebody. If I was popping to yours for a cuppa and I hadn't got any charge, I might have to ask if I can plug in.
So without this luggage,
life
wouldn't be
I'd
as easy
be stuck.
on this bike.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are they waterproof?
Yes, they have been waterproof, but they don't come with any bags inside. So
Right.
I've ended up having to put other bags.
So when you go to a hotel, you don't want to take these big
don't want
things
to take the
into-
mucky big
no.
boxes off. So
No. Okay. Right. The fast charger is very good but expensive.
seems to be a theme here. It costs around £2,500 to have the fast charger fitted. It fits into this tank area here.
Yeah.
So that whole space is filled with another charger. What it will do is if I then go to quicker chargers, so anything that's sort of around 11 to 13 kilowatts or above, as long as they're working properly, it reduces the charge time down to about an hour to get a reasonable amount of miles in the bike.
Yeah.
But obviously it adds that other dimension of you have to find the chargers that are suitable and they have to deliver the charge.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's not a given that you'll just turn up and they'll do what they say on the tin.
No, it's not like riding up to a petrol station. As long as they've got petrol, you put it in and it
it's
works.
going to be an unleaded that is.
Unleaded's unleaded. With this, you can rock up to a charger and if it's not working efficiently, it can cause all manner of problems and time. So, that's a bit of a problem.
When you say it's expensive, is the charging expensive or is having the fast charger fitted expensive?
The fast charger being fitted is an extra £2,500 on top of the purchase price, so it's around 10% of the bike price. With respect to charging, costs fluctuate drastically from plugging in at home through to when you're away. It's the same as fuel prices. If you stop on a motorway, you're going to pay higher premium charge for your fuel than you are if you stop in a city centre, sort of Morrison's, for example. But so the charging does vary drastically.
I mean, I've ridden a lot of electric bikes lately and I'm staggered that fast chargers aren't standard. I mean, why?
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I don't understand.
How are you supposed to charge when you're out and about?
Yeah, and with the price of the bike being as high as it is anyway,
which is,
they're on offer at the moment at just over 20,000. But at the beginning of the year when I took it on, it was around 24 grand.
That's a lot of
money. It's a lot of money. It is a lot of money.
Panigale territory, Multistrada, V4 territory.
Yeah, you're paying for the technology. I absolutely appreciate that and understand that, but it is a lot of money.
And the final one on your good list is it's easy to ride.
It is. It's so easy. You literally just jump on, open the throttle and go. When I first took it on, I was a little bit nervous because I'd heard reports that the throttle can be a little bit snatchy and, you can get yourself in a pickle. But I've never had any issue whatsoever. Just first couple of rides, obviously, just judge it and work it out. But from day one, I literally jumped on it and did 50 miles on my first ride out and never had any issues whatsoever. Okay.
Right. Let's get on to the negatives, which I'm sure everyone can guess what they are.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first negative is the infrastructure of the chargers.
Yeah, the infrastructure is basically designed for cars and bikes are quite evidently an afterthought. It's right from the offset, it's the little things, like as you can see here, our chargers, there's no cover over them.
Yeah.
So if you, like today I turned up and it was raining, you go to plug it in, you're getting wet trying to plug it in.
Yeah.
You've then got to find an app to use because all of the different companies, because in most of the UK or England particularly, there's hundreds of different companies that all have a different app. They either totally app based, or some will have a swipe card you can use, some you can use your credit card. There's no sort of continuity with any of them. If you go to a petrol station, again, I liken it to going to a petrol station, you don't have to use Shell currency to use a Shell petrol station.
No.
Or have Tesco money to use a Tesco one. You just go, you put it in, you use your credit card.
Yeah.
When I went up to Scotland recently, I purposely went up to Scotland because I'd been told that they've got a better infrastructure up there, and they have. Along with the government, they've set up this thing called Charge Place Scotland, and even in very small little towns and villages, they've got the charging points that are all from the same company. So you get a card and it just works. But again, the same setup, no covers for the charging points, nowhere to shelter.
Yeah, because you're waiting here for an hour or so.
Yeah.
You're just stood here in the rain.
Could be.
If there's nowhere to get a drink or whatever.
The other thing as well, I've totally changed the way I'm riding. I've not ridden at night at all because I've had the fear of having to try and charge at night.
Yeah.
A lot of the charging points are also in very isolated car parks. So you'll, like in Peterborough in particular, I did a check around where we live just to see how they're located. Some of them are in car parks I wouldn't go in my car at night, let alone on a bike and then be stood. You're very, very vulnerable because after all, you've got a £25,000 motorcycle. You've got a telephone worth a lot of money in your hand trying to fiddle around making the app work.
You.
And me as well, yeah. I'm the least important bit of the whole chain.
No, you're not.
Yeah, but no, absolutely. It's absolutely changed how I've been riding because of the infrastructure.
And that's no fault of the bike, is it? It's just the infrastructure.
That's a whole bigger picture.
Yeah, that's the big problem, isn't it?
That is a whole bigger picture that's got to change. Yeah. I did go to one charging place down in Braintree run by GridServe just as a tester to see what it was like. And it has 36 different chargers of different capacities. It's actually a fuel station for electric. Now that's the way forward because it's got a proper service building that you go and sit in with a Costa coffee and an M&S food hall. It actually even got push bikes that you cycle on, so that you can put some juice back into the charging grid. Yeah. So it's little things like that. If it's thought about, it can work, but basically it's not been thought about enough at the moment.
And you really need to plan your journey.
You have to plan your journey to the nth degree with this. It's if you know that you're going to do more than the range of the bike, which is around 90 to 100 miles, you have to then start planning. To go to Scotland the other week, I'd set a complete route up all around the charging points, getting the faster chargers so that it would reduce my time at each location. My first point I got to, I plugged it in and the charger was only charging at a rate of 3 kilowatts an hour, which meant I was stuck in Doncaster. No disrespect to Doncaster, but it wasn't somewhere I really wanted to be stuck.
No.
And I was stuck in Doncaster for 2 hours to get 40 miles in my bike to be able to get me to another place where allegedly had fast chargers. So I moved up the road to Wetherby Services and I did then get my fast charge, but I'd had 2 hours in Doncaster where it should have been an hour. I then had another hour and a bit sat in Wetherby, and then I carried on my journey. So what should have been on a petrol bike, I would have taken, I did a 220 mile journey. So with stops, I would have been 5, maybe 6 hours. I was 11 hours.
Wow. And that's your plan out the window.
It absolutely threw my plan out the window. I accepted, I know that you have to have a different mindset. I was well aware of that. But it's that first, like you rock up to the first charger and it's not working properly. And I'd only got 10 miles left in the bike, so I had to plug in. It wasn't like I could then start riding around looking for other chargers. It was like, well, I've just got to get plugged in, get some charge and then move on to the next location. But yeah, it's not done my bank balance very good because obviously everywhere, or my waistline actually, because everywhere I stop, you end up with a coffee, a cake and away you go.
Expensive coffees and expensive cakes.
And it's costing far more than filling up the bike.
Yeah. And also, I guess that you can't be riding with anyone. If you ride someone with a petrol bike, they're going to be waiting around with you. If you ride with someone with an electric bike, you might not have enough chargers to go around. Yeah,
that's exactly the issue. I've ridden out with my husband. We've got an X-Max scooter, so we went out for a ride on those. But of course, he could have kept going for 160, 170 miles. 60 miles into the journey, I'm starting to panic looking for a charger.
Yeah.
I also went out, I had a really great couple of days away with the boss from Zero, and he was giving me some top tips on how to ride using the electric system. But he'd got a fast charger at that point, and I hadn't, because the fast charger hadn't been fitted. So every time we were stopping, he was getting more juice into his bike. So by the end of the day, he was ending up with 60 or 70 miles in his bike. I'd got 10.
Yeah.
And it's all disproportionate all the way through. So yeah, I've ended up I do a lot of riding on my own anyway, but I've done even more on my own this year because my friends don't like my electric bike.
No. Crikey. Right then. So that is a big minus.
Yeah.
The next thing on your list is the pillion comfort.
Well, you well know the pillion comfort because we did a little test a couple of weeks back, didn't we? And I think we both found it was quite cramped from a pillion perspective. I jumped on the back and had you riding so that I could judge, because I've had more experience of being a pillion. I wouldn't say either of us are particularly large. You're, 6 foot, I'm 5'10". We both found that we were sort of pretty crammed in, particularly with the top box being in place. This section here, I felt all the time I was really hemmed in, and I know you equally had a problem, didn't you?
Yeah, because this seat's really dished and you're really cramped in this.
Yeah. The other thing I found as well is my feet, I struggled to get my foot on the peg with the box. I've only got a size 7 foot, so it's not as if they're huge by any stretch of the imagination. But it was very awkward to get your foot on with all big proper riding boots on. So yeah, it wasn't the best.
And it affected the range.
It did. We did a 30-mile route. We purposely plotted a route where we did exactly the same route, 2 up and then you on your own, and you rode in exactly the same manner. And on the 30 miles, we used 5% extra charge with 2 up. So basically, you're going to lose about 15 miles on a tank. I say tank range, but on a charge. You're going to lose about 15 miles on a full charge with 2 up.
And then you've got to wait around together.
And then you have to wait around together. And if you don't particularly like the person...
conversations. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, thank goodness we didn't have to charge, eh?
Exactly. Okay, so not so good for pillions. Now you've talked about cost.
Yeah. We touched on it earlier. At the moment, they're selling them for just over 20,000. And they have... When I first took the bike on in May of this year, it was around 24,000. As we've touched on before, it's quite a simplistic design. Things like the switchgear we know are shared across other manufacturers, because Piaggio particularly, because you guys have mentioned it. It's little things like that, and as you've commented on, the brakes aren't necessarily the best quality.
No.
The investment, the money is obviously gone into the technology of the bike. I absolutely understand that, but for a machine that you can only do 90 to 100 miles without having to stop, it isn't a bike that I would want to spend 24,000 on. No, personally.
100% agree. I think that a 24,000 electric bike should be the same quality as a 24,000 and as well equipped as a 24 grand petrol bike, and it just isn't. No. I mean, I've ridden this bike and I think it's poor. Yeah. It's definitely way down the scale in terms of electric bikes, in terms of the ride quality, the equipment. It crashes and bangs over bumps. It's not a great bike. No, it's a shame. Okay, so next one, you adapting the riding style. You've had to adapt to different riding styles.
Yeah, I so wanted to not have to change how I ride. Every year I do a European trip. I clear off for a solo week somewhere. This year I planned to go to Berlin, but the minute I took on the bike and realised how long it takes to charge when you're stopping, and how, I suppose it's the fact that you can't guarantee the infrastructure is going to work and the chargers are going to work. To be honest, I bottled it. Yeah. And I went to Berlin on a petrol bike, and my husband flew out and met me, and I went on a Triumph Tiger and had a great time. And I got there in 3 days, where I know with this, there's no way I would have risked doing it. And there's not often I bottle out of doing things, but I just, that was a step too far. So I've ended up having to adapt my riding to go around the bike. So like I say, the other week I went to Scotland on it. Had a lovely couple of days, but I bought a book to sit and read while I'm charging it, because I knew that each stop I was going to have at least an hour, where normally quite often I'll just jump off the bike, fill it up with petrol, quick drink, quick wee, jump back on, half an hour, you're back on the bike and you're on the move again. With this, every time I stopped, it was an hour to an hour and a half minimum. And, well, it's lovely when it's a nice sunny day.
Yeah.
Because in the summer, when I was out, as I say, with a guy from Zero, Dale and I, we plotted some charging stations so that they were nice locations. So we had lunch at Thruxton, sat watching a track day. It was brilliant. But if I'm trying to get from A to B, I don't want to be faffing around and having lunch at Thruxton. I want to be able to plug it in, charge it, move on. So yeah, I've had to adapt my riding style to suit the bike. And at the moment, I don't want to change how I'm riding.
No.
I want to enjoy a bike for what I want to do with it. So,
electric bikes aren't built for distance yet.
they're not. It needs to do twice the range in half the time charging. If you could get this to do 200 miles on a range rather than 90 to 100, most people, 200 miles is actually enough in a day.
Yeah.
You know, that's a nice day. But the trouble is with this, as I say, when I went up to Scotland the other week, the only time I was stopping was to charge it. So you lose that, let's stop here because it's a pretty view, or, oh, I really fancy a coffee.
Yeah.
Because every time I stop, I have to think, right, it's got to be a practical and useful stopping point. You've got to actually make use of that time better than just having a coffee and looking at a pretty view. And it's taken away a little bit from the biking for me, to be honest, from that perspective.
Right then, that wasn't so good, was it?
Sorry.
Tyres.
Well,
was a bad point.
I think you can comment on the tyres better than I could. I think it doesn't help because you've got no engine noise to mask noises. They're incredibly noisy and you feel every bump with these tyres. And they're the OE standard ones that it came on.
They're noisy, they're uncomfortable, and they've got no grip.
So other than that, they're
perfect.
Other
than that, I think they're wearing well.
They
not
are wearing
Not
well.
that they have to do many miles.
We haven't touched on actually what they are, have we?
They are
Can you see yours?
Pirelli Scorpion Trail 2. But I would suspect they're OE versions, not the replacements you buy in the shops, because they are good. So. Okay, next one on your bad list is charging cables take up so much space.
We touched on that earlier.
On that, didn't we?
Basically, this top box is 2/3 full of cables.
That's it.
That's it, basically. Because they're huge, they're pretty industrial, and they need to be reasonably long. Obviously, so you've got quite a lot of faff to fit in the box. Absolutely.
I know we tested a CE01 BMW scooter recently, and the storage space it's got is taken up with the charger, so you can't put anything in it.
It's mad, isn't it?
All right, number 7, anxiety of living with this bike.
I wasn't grey.
No, I know.
It was brunette until this year, but no, joking apart. No, it has caused a little bit of range anxiety, and as I say, I've changed the way I ride. I don't ride at night now, unless I know I've got enough charge to get home or to the destination where I'm heading. And initially, when I first got it, I wouldn't go any more than about 30 miles from home without starting to try and charge it. The minute I got sort of 30 or 40 miles from home, I'd be thinking, right, I need to look for a charger because I can't get to a point where I can't get home again. It did take a little while to overcome that, and I have overcome that now, and it's sort of, you have to just go with the flow a little bit with it. But definitely there's a range anxiety there.
All the time.
Pretty much most of the time,
Spend all your time looking at the dash, looking at your range and...
trying to calculate all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
Right, the next one is, okay, with regard to the amount of charge in it, 100% is only 90%. Need to use the extended range to actually get 100%. What do you mean by that?
Right. Because batteries degrade as you try and fill them every time. If you're trying to get 100% charge into a battery every time, it's going to wear the battery more. So what Zero have done is when the dash says it's got 100% in the battery, it's actually only got 90%.
Right.
So if you're going on a long distance, you want to click the setting to extended range, which on the dash will then give you 110%, and that's actually 100%.
Okay.
So you can pretty much guarantee every time I get on the bike and I go and do a long distance ride, I've forgotten to do that. And I'm only ever at
90.
the equivalent of 90% because it's just another thing you have to think about. When you get in and the last thing you want to do is all fiddle around and do this, but that's the whole point behind it, is so that you're not overfilling the battery. So you're not wearing the battery as much as you should. The optimum charging is something between like about 20 and 80%
That's right, yeah.
in the
Keeping
battery.
it in that sweet spot.
Yeah, and what you find is over 80%, it really slows down the rate in which it's charging
Right.
as well. So if you're planning any journeys, you need to really be planning on getting to around 80% in your battery. So do it at the quickest rate.
Yeah.
But then obviously that's less miles on the range. So yeah, don't.
Your natural instinct would be, oh, let's do a few more miles. I've still got some in the tank.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't do
and
that.
Well,
it's not efficient to do that.
It's not efficient, no.
It's heavy.
It is heavy. It's 240 kilograms. So it's a big lump. Again, obviously the weight's all in the battery.
This is the big battery box here.
Yeah, it's massive. Yes, it's heavy. It has got the reverse gear, as we touched on earlier, which makes a massive difference. But it's heavy.
Pushing it around.
Pushing it around. And when you first lift it upright to go on it, the first time you go to pull away, you're sort of like, you can feel the weight there. Once it's on the move, it disappears like all bikes.
Yeah.
But again, as I touched on earlier, I've got a very weird setup at home where I have to use a gravel lane and things. Those first couple of times I set off from our garage, heading off up the very rutted gravel lane, I'm like, if I lose this, I'm not going to get it picked up again.
Exactly.
But touch wood, we haven't had any mishaps. But
and finally, you said it's noisy. So obviously it can't be the engine because it doesn't make any noise.
No, it's noise from the tyres. It's really weird, that noise from the tyres. It's just odd. And the other thing, I sort of say noisy, but also the opposite of that, it's quiet when you're coming through traffic and through. I've had a couple of incidences where pedestrians have stepped out in front of me because there's no sound from the bike.
Yeah.
So the lack of noise is also an issue.
Yeah.
So the noise when you're riding from the wind and the tyres and all of just sort of those sounds are odd. I actually quite like sometimes if you're out in the countryside and you can hear the birds tweeting over the bike. But when you're in a town, and then I've had, like I say, numerous people have stepped out in front of me at different points. When you're coming through the town that I live in is quite twisty-turny and it's very full of pedestrians always. They step out in front of you and don't even see you. So,
can I add to the noise?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you found an issue with the screen.
Jeez. Anything over 50 mile an hour, that is horrendous. It's like no one's actually tested this bike. It's really disappointing. Well, that's your goods and bads. I think you've done an admirable job living with this all year.
Thank
and I think I know you were in two minds about it at the beginning of the year because like you say, it's going to change the way you ride and the way you enjoy riding bikes. You like doing lots of trips and touring, don't you? But it's definitely given you and us an insight into exactly what it's like to live an electric bike. When you ignore the PR spin, you know, when the PR companies tell you, well, you can do this route because they carefully planned it. But just to do an ad hoc, go for a nice long ride, you just can't. It's
a real shame. I think personally, it would brilliant for commuting. If it was half, a third of the price, and you were just using it for commuting, absolutely perfect. But the minute you overstep and want to do more than the range, and it's throwing in charging on the move.
Yeah.
That's been my biggest bugbear for the whole year. Charging at home, no problem. Charging at work, no issue.
Yeah.
It's the minute you're on the move and you want to do multiple charge stops, that's when the problems start occurring.
So commuting's fine. There's a charger at each end, or even if it's a small one, you just keep it.
Absolutely perfect.
A small Sunday ride.
Yeah, little day trips out.
I agree. I mean, there's some great electric bikes out there. We've recently ridden the Livewire S2 Del Mar.
Yeah.
And as a motorcycle, if you ignore the electric stuff, it's really, really good. Much better than this. But you can't ignore the electric side of things.
No.
Not at the moment, until the infrastructure and everything you've described gets better.
It's the infrastructure and the actual bike needs to do more miles.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line with it.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Well, thanks very much for talking us through your year with Zero. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos like this, but with petrol bikes very soon.